guys, so today we're going to work on subtracting decimals, and just like yesterday when we did adding decimals, the most important thing when you're subtracting is to always line up your decimal points. So I've got some examples up here for us today, and I have 4 6/10 minus 3 2/10. So just like yesterday, we always need to do that estimate. So if I am rounding 4 6/10 to the nearest whole, I'm going to round that to 5. And if I am rounding 3 2/10 to the nearest whole, I'm going to round that to 3. So if I do that simple subtraction problem, I'm left with 2. So over here, I rewrote the problem vertically for us already. And if you look, I made sure that I lined up my decimals and I lined up all the place values that we have. So our 4 and our 3 were in the ones place, and I lined those up. I lined up our decimal points, and then our 6 and our 2 were in the tenths place. So I lined those up for us as well, and now it just turns into a regular old-fashioned subtraction problem. So I've got 6 minus 2, which equals 4. My decimal point just falls down straight into the problem. And then I've got 4 minus 3, which is 1. And so my final answer is 1.4, which doesn't exactly round to 2, but sometimes that's what happens when we estimate. They're definitely close enough where 1.4 would be a reasonable answer if our estimate was 2. So when I get down here to this example, this one gets a little bit more complicated, and you can see I've kind of already color-coded some of this already just to make my videos a little bit shorter. So I have 9 48/100ths minus 7 291 thousandths. So if you look, I've color-coded again because we need to line up those decimals, line up all those place values. Our 9 and our 7 both fall into the ones place, so I've lined those up when I rewrite it vertically. My decimal points line up here, and then I've got my 4 and my 2 that are both in my tenths place. I underline those in blue, and those line up right here. I've got my 8 and my 9, which both fall into the hundredths place, so I've lined those up here. And then if you look, I don't have any digit in the thousandths place in this one, but I do have a digit in the thousandths place here. So this is where it gets kind of tricky, and you absolutely have to make sure that you're lining your decimals up correctly. You definitely need to put that placeholder 0 in here, otherwise your math is going to come out all funky. So I'm going to put that 0 in. It doesn't change the value of what I have. That 0 in the thousandths place is just a placeholder. But before I do the actual subtraction, we need to make our estimate. So 9 48/100ths, I am going to estimate that to 9. And then I've got my 7 291 thousandths. So I'm going to estimate that to 7. And my estimate for that one is going to be a 2. So now when I do the actual math, I'm going to start over here in my thousandths place. And because I put that placer 0 here, I've got 0 minus 1. If I have 0 things, I can't take away 1. So I've got to go over here and I've got to borrow from this 8 just like I would in any normal subtraction problem. This 8 becomes a 7. My 0 then becomes a 10. So now I have 10 minus 1 is 9. I can't do 7 minus 9. I don't have enough. So I have to borrow from over here. This becomes a 3. And this becomes a 17. So when I subtract 17 minus 9, I get 8. Then this I can't do this subtraction. 3 minus 2 is 1. My decimal, it carries down into my problem, or into my answer, and then 9 minus 7 is 2. So my final answer for this subtraction problem is 2 189 thousandths, which is pretty close to my estimate of 2. So, like I said, subtracting decimals not really any different than adding decimals, except for your subtracting, as long as you make sure that those decimal points are always lined up. So now what I want you guys to do is I want you to go grab that PDF that's on the next slide in Canvas. It's going to be Subtracting Decimals PDF, and I want you to pull that over into Notability. I'm going to do some more problems up here on the chart paper, and I'm going to have you guys follow along with me. So go ahead, get that loaded into Notability, and then after you have that done, go ahead and go on to the next slide.